I've started a new series on my channel to document my journey of leaving the UK and relocating to Thailand. There's going to be lots of videos within this series, lots of different topics and subjects, but in today's video I'm going to be expanding on the 10 reasons that I shared in my last video, my 10 reasons for moving to Thailand, and just go into a little bit more detail about each of them. Hi, welcome back. If you are new here, my name is Meg and my channel has had a little bit of an update recently, so I've just slightly changed my bio and my account name or my handle name just to give a bit of context as to what is going on at the moment. So as I said at the start, I'm leaving the UK and I'm relocating to Thailand. It's a fairly epic, life-changing stage that I'm going through at the moment. I really want to share this journey with you and document the process along the way, so whilst the core principles of my channel will remain the same, obviously my content will be a little bit different moving forward. And then of course once I've actually arrived in Thailand, which is in just over 2 months time now, which is very exciting, obviously then I'll be filming in a different country as well for the foreseeable future. So yeah, today's video is basically an expansion of the video that I made last week, so it's effectively a part 2. I'll just be going into a little bit more detail about each of the 10 reasons which I shared in that video as to why I'm leaving the UK and moving to the other side of the world. So let's get into the video. Just a small disclaimer before we get started, although this should be fairly obvious, but I just wanted to say, of course, this video is just purely based on my own personal opinions and my own personal experiences. Everybody's circumstances and personal situations are different, and I think it's really important that we don't take everything that YouTubers and content creators say as gospel. It's really important that we all do our own individual research. Other YouTubers, for example, that I subscribe to, a small handful which have indirectly helped me and inspired me, their financial situation, for example, is very different to mine. So I just pick and choose what's relevant to me and what's helpful to me, and you should do the same with my videos. All of the content that I share, whether it's on my YouTube channel or my Instagram, it's all just entirely based on my own personal opinions and experiences, which of course will be different to other people. And it's kind of sad that we have to put these sort of disclaimers in videos, but I see a lot of people in comment sections who really pick apart what content creators share and they twist their words, and it's sad because it's just common sense to do your own research. You know, everybody's circumstances are different. So yeah, of course this video, same with all my other videos, and this entire series will just purely be based on my own personal experiences, my own research, my own opinions, and all I can do is share that with you in the hopes that it will help you, but of course just pick and choose what's relevant to you and don't worry about the bits that are not. Okay, so in at number 1, and I did say in the previous video, this list is not necessarily in any particular order, but one of the main reasons I'm leaving the UK and relocating to Thailand is the cost of living. The cost of living was the number 1 reason that I shared in my last video. Pretty self-explanatory, the quality of life that you can have in Thailand, and in particular in my case in Bangkok, which is where I'm initially going to be moving to, versus the quality of life that you can have here in the UK is just worlds apart. So I don't even think, if we were to compare Bangkok and London alongside each other, I don't live in London, I never have lived in London, but if we were to compare the two alongside each other, which technically we should be able to do, they're both major capital cities, and this myth, which is rather insulting, that Thailand is some sort of developing third world country, is completely untrue, particularly in the case of Bangkok. Like, I would say that Bangkok is actually a lot more developed than a lot of cities and a lot of towns in the UK. If we were to compare the two alongside each other, I don't even think it's possible to live in London, any decent quality of life at least, on the budget that I'll be living on in Bangkok. And I will be making a video about this. I don't know if I'm going to make the video before I leave or once I actually get there, but I will definitely be making a video about my budget in Bangkok. So just to clarify, I am a very frugal person. Even here in the UK, I'm grateful to live in a new modern apartment or flat, but I do lead a very basic, simple, frugal lifestyle. I've been like that my whole life. I've been like it since I was a child. I've always lived on a shoestring. I'm used to living on a budget. So yeah, I think it's important to clarify that I'm not moving to Bangkok and going to be living some lavish or more luxury lifestyle than I do now. It's pretty much going to be the same, except even more affordable, which is mind-blowing. So even though my budget will be lower in Bangkok, my quality of life won't be lower, and in fact it will be very similar to what I'm living here, if not better in a way. So even though I live in a very, very small city, so nothing compared to London, so technically it should be a lot cheaper here, there's no way that I'd be able to have my own space or my own studio or apartment, for example, here in the UK on the same budget as over in Bangkok. Food is more expensive here, just general utilities and bills are also more expensive, and yet you can live in Bangkok, which is a major capital city, for a lot less than what you can live here in the UK, particularly where I'm living down in the south of England. Technically cheaper than London, and yet I still wouldn't be able to live on the budget that I'm going to be living on in Bangkok. But I will be making another video about this. But yeah, I'll obviously also be doing a tour of my apartment over there and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, in at number 1, I've expanded a little bit too much already. So let's try and keep the next 9 short and sweet. But yeah, in at number 1 was the cost of living. Okay, so number 2 was the weather. Again, fairly self-explanatory. We all know that the UK is renowned for being quite grey and a bit miserable in terms of the weather. It rains a lot and our summers are very short. And I was saying in the last video, if you haven't seen that one yet, that although I'm a natural redhead with very pale skin, I can't sit in the sun directly for pretty much any more than 15 minutes, I still cope with tropical climates a lot better than I cope with the weather in the UK. So the weather by no means in the UK is extreme. There are lots of countries in the world where it is a lot more extreme, and Thailand has a lot of quite extreme, you know, climates itself. It has 3 different seasons. I've visited during each of those seasons and they can be unbearable. The rainy season is pretty intense and it does make day-to-day living quite difficult, the same as the intense heat can be very difficult to cope with. But on balance, as I was explaining in my last video, on balance, I feel just generally in my body, my well-being in general, and my mental health suffers a lot more in the cold and the overall weather in the UK versus in Southeast Asia. I've been to a number of different Southeast Asian countries and I always instantly just feel better within myself, and also my mental health. I think that has a huge impact. The weather has a huge impact on people's mental health. Even though the climate in Thailand can be quite difficult to manage, obviously there's also things like mosquitoes, which seem to always love me, which I am a little bit worried about. But yeah, just on balance, in general, I suffer a lot more with cold weather than I do in hotter weather. Number 3 was people, and I didn't go into too much detail about this one in the first video because I knew that I would want to expand on this particular topic. I'm still going to try and keep it fairly short though, because I could really go on about this one for quite a long time and I don't want to make this video any longer than it needs to. But basically the people, yeah, I just generally from experience, having spent a number of years in both the UK, other countries in Europe, for example, and I've also visited several Southeast Asian countries and also other parts of the world as well. Generally, I just find people to be a lot friendlier in Thailand. There is this sort of attitude in the West, and particularly here in the UK, and I'm gonna leave it at that because I don't want to be too specific. You know, obviously this isn't directed at anybody in particular. It's not the whole of the UK. It doesn't mean that it's everybody. I said that in my last video. Just an overall experience that I've had having lived in different countries. People's attitude in general kind of sucks here in the UK, whereas in Thailand people just are a lot friendlier, not so tense. I find that there's a lot of tension and sort of uptightness in the UK, and again, I'm not saying that that's everybody, but it's enough that you notice it when you go to other countries, if that makes sense. I just want to check my notes to make sure that I don't forget anything, because I could really expand on this one. I don't want to generalize too much, but yeah, I've written the mentality and the outlook. I just feel like it's very different. The West has its problems, and so does Southeast Asia. Thailand is by no means a perfect country. The people are not perfect. You know, nowhere is perfect, but just generally, if you know, you know. If you've experienced other countries and other cultures and, you know, different types of people, then you'll sort of know what I'm getting at. But the mentality and the outlook and the attitude in general, particularly here in the UK, is not super appealing, and I do find it difficult to find my people, if that makes sense. But I will go into a bit more detail about that one. Also, just checking my notes, also there's a general lack of respect I find here in the UK, just towards others in general, towards things, towards buildings. You know, I see a lot of vandalism that goes on, and then they laugh about it. Like, you just wouldn't see that in Thailand. There's just more respect in general. Not everybody, of course, but in general, there's just an undercurrent of higher respect in Thailand amongst people than here in the UK. There's a lot of yobbiness, and I think that's a good word to describe it, and just behaviours here in the UK that you wouldn't see in Thailand, and just a sort of very low level of respect, unfortunately, here for all sorts, you know, minority groups, foreigners, elderly people, women, etc, etc, etc. I mean, there's lots of different groups we could mention, but yeah, it's and again, Thailand is not perfect. The people, you know, Thai people are not perfect either, but yeah, just generally that sort of mentality, outlook, attitude, I find it to be more comfortable, more easygoing, friendlier, and just more enjoyable in Southeast Asia. Number 4 is food. Again, fairly self-explanatory. Millions of people would agree that Thai food is amazing. It's not just the variety of different dishes and flavors and different meals that you can get, but also the affordability. That's also another really important one that definitely falls under this category, I think. It's not just the food, but it's also the affordability and the availability of food. The fact that you can just step out of your accommodation and walk 2 meters down the road, and there is about a dozen different options of little street side carts or little shop houses, or, you know, little local eateries on the side of the road, and it's just amazing at super affordable prices. You know, it's authentically, traditionally made by auntie who's been, let's say, making the same bowl of noodles for 20 years, for example, and it's super affordable, no more than $2 per meal or per dish, and really, really yummy food and lots of variety. So yeah, number 4 is a huge one, particularly for me as a foodie. So number 5 was culture. The culture in Southeast Asia, quite similar to number 3, where I was talking about the people and just the general mentality and attitude. Culture is a big one for me. I have personally never fit in to British culture in particular, and just the West in general. Even though I was born in the UK, as I said in my previous video, my parents were British or English, whatever. I have a British passport, and I've just never really aligned with British culture. I spent a number of years living abroad, so second part of my childhood I lived in another country, and then I went on my own to live in other different countries, and then I've been back here now in the UK permanently for 13 years, which is actually my longest stretch in one single country. And I'm now 37 years old, and I've seen and experienced a lot of different cultures. I mean, not as many as some people, you know, I've only been to 14 countries, which I think is a lot. But, you know, some people have obviously lived in a lot more and visited a lot more countries. But just for me personally, the culture in the UK, I've just never aligned with it. And as I was preparing for this video, actually somebody commented on my last video, which was really quite heartwarming. And I'm just going to read their comment out, because if I'm quite honest, this pretty much sums up what I would have said myself about this particular reason. What resonated with me, so I think they're referring to what I said in my last video, was that I fit in far more culturally, even the typically negative parts that Westerners usually cite, like saving face culture. It makes complete sense to me. I connected with people much more easily. I felt like I could be myself. Yeah, I totally relate to that one. I've never felt like I fit the Western mold. Again, I completely relate to that. I don't like a lot of attitudes in the UK. I don't feel like I fit in with culture. Even the countryside I find boring. 99% of it is privately owned farmland here in the UK. I'm assuming they're referring to the UK. When I first visited Southeast Asia, it was like a light bulb moment. Things just made sense to me, and my body and my mind could breathe. Oh my God, I cannot tell you, it almost brought a tear to my eye reading that comment, because, well, not only does that mean that somebody has had value from that, you know, from my video, but I literally could not relate to those words anymore. You know, that literally perfectly describes how I would have expanded on this point about culture. And another one, I'm just checking my notes, is also the concept of sharing food. There is very much this all for oneself mentality in the West, but particularly here in the UK. I don't want to generalize too much about the West, but particularly here in the UK, there's this all for oneself sort of attitude, which you don't really see in Southeast Asian countries. And I find it quite sad. Even though I'm British, was born here, I really like, for example, sitting down and laying a load of different dishes and different foods out, and for everybody to pick and share, and for it to be a moment of connection with people, even with strangers. You know, that happens a lot. I know a lot of people who go to Southeast Asia on their own, and they sit and connect with people over food, or they get invited to things by strangers, and you wouldn't really ever encounter that here in the UK. If you did, it would be incredibly rare, and it certainly wouldn't be, you know, strangers. Just, yeah, that concept of sharing food, it's very present in other cultures, of course, not just in Southeast Asia or Thailand, for example. You know, India is the same, where everybody just sits around and it's like this communal moment for connection. Whereas in the UK, and again, this isn't a generalization, but in the UK, there's a lot of this sort of sitting on the sofa with your meal on your lap on a tray, and you just watch the TV. You don't really connect with your family or whoever it is that you happen to live with. And I find that a bit sad. And again, I'm not saying that that's everybody, but you know, it's enough that I've noticed it to be quite a common theme, so to speak. Whereas you don't get that in Thailand. You know, people are just as busy in Thailand. They've got families, children, people to look after, jobs to go to. They've got busy schedules as well, but they still make that time to share with their loved ones, or even just generally connecting with people and sharing food. Whereas here it's a bit like, no, this is my plate, and you know, I don't want to, yeah. It's a bit of a shame, and that's just another one of the many elements of the culture here, or aspects of the culture here in the UK, that I've just never ever aligned with, and I've never fitted in. Is that the right word? I've always felt like a foreigner in my own country. I've always felt a lot more comfortable when I'm in actual foreign countries. And so yeah, I did briefly mention that in my last video. Let me just check that I haven't forgot anything. And yeah, also just to wrap this one up, I don't think that the UK is a bad country. I said this in my last video. And I also don't think that Thailand is perfect. Thailand has its own challenges. It has its own cultural aspects that can be difficult to understand, or, you know, difficult to manage maybe. But just generally on balance, yeah, I just align with Southeast Asian, you know, Thai culture, for example, in general, a lot more than I do here in the UK. I feel a lot more comfortable and at home, which is very strange, in Southeast Asia whenever I've been, and I've been a number of times, versus here in the UK. I've just never quite felt at ease, I think is the right way to put it. Not comfortable within myself. Just simple things, just to wrap this one up. I did say I could probably expand on these two, people and culture, quite a lot, but just for example, you know, going out on your own as a woman, for example, and you sit in a, let's say, a pub or a bar, and you sit on your own. There's a lot of judgment that comes with that here in the UK. People, it's almost like they assume, oh, well, she's a, you know, a woman out on her own where they sell alcohol, so she must be up to something, or there must be something untoward going on, which is really sad, because I've done exactly the same things over in Thailand, and you know, nobody looks at you funny, nobody judges you, nobody makes assumptions about you without actually knowing. You know, it's the assumptions and the judgment and the negative outlook that I find it really sad. You know, and yet I'm the same person when I go over there. You know, and people just don't judge that sort of thing. For example, they don't think, oh, well, why is a woman sat out, you know, on her own? She must be doing something. You know, no, you know, it's okay to talk to people and to sit on your own. When a guy goes out and has a drink on his own, nobody bats an eyelid. And I'll leave it there, because yeah, I'll leave it there. But yeah, so the culture is another big reason, and reading that message out, which really touched my heart, that comment that was left by a viewer on my previous video, sums it up really, really well. Okay, and number 6 was safety. I can see the light gradually creeping in, so I'm going to try and do my best to hurry up. But yeah, safety, again, fairly self-explanatory. I've always felt a lot safer in Southeast Asia than I have here in the UK. I gave an example in my last video where I was talking about living here in a very, very small city, so not somewhere like London or some major city in the UK which have a lot of crime. Even here in just this very small city that I live in, if you can even call it a city, it's more like a big town really. But anyway, I walk down, let's just say the high street, you know, just full of shops and people in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, you know, not 2 o'clock in the morning or any weird random time where maybe you'd have to be a little bit more on guard. And I just don't feel particularly safe. It feels unpredictable, and yeah, whereas over in Southeast Asia I can walk around at any time of the day, in particular Thailand. I need to stop expanding into Southeast Asia, but particularly Thailand, let's say Bangkok, major capital city, absolutely rammed with people. I never ever feel unsafe, and it doesn't matter what time of the day it is. It doesn't matter whether I'm, you know, just sat people watching at 2 o'clock in the morning because I'm jet lagged and I can't go to sleep and I just want to sit and watch people go about their night, and just, I don't know, just simple things like that. You know, I don't feel unsafe. I wouldn't be able to do that here in the UK, which is really, really sad. And that's saying something, considering that I'm a foreigner when I'm over there. You know, I can't read and write everything. I can't speak Thai. I mean, I know a little bit of Thai and I'm learning before I get there, but you know, I'm technically pretty unfamiliar with everything that's going on around me. But yeah, I've never felt unsafe, and I think especially as a solo female traveller, or you know, moving on your own as a woman in particular, I think that's an important consideration. Everybody deserves to be safe, of course. Doesn't matter who you are, everybody deserves to be safe. But yeah, safety is definitely a massive one, and that was number 6. Okay, so my 7th reason was easier access to other Southeast Asian neighbouring countries. So yeah, again, don't really need to expand on this one too much. Basically, compared to the UK, where I want to be over on that side of the world, I have to spend 14 hours on a plane. There's lots of airports and waiting and arrival times involved, and then there's also usually a layover. For me personally, there's generally a layover in Qatar, which is what I will be doing when I fly over in March, and it takes pretty much a full 24 hours if you take into account the time difference and then the jet lag and all the time that you spend in the different airports, and then the flying on top of that, and then getting to your accommodation in Bangkok. The whole process from start to finish, from the moment I leave my flat here to the moment I arrive in my accommodation and check in wherever I'm staying in Bangkok, it's almost 24 hours of just straight traveling. And I am unfortunately one of those people that doesn't sleep well on planes. I mean, I generally suffer from insomnia anyway. I think most people struggle to sleep on planes, you know, get any decent rest, the noise, the people, the smells, etc., the pressure. So yeah, not having to spend 14 hours on a plane and, you know, a whole 24 hours of very tiring traveling to get to the actual part of the world that I want to be in is going to be a huge benefit, and is definitely one of the main appealing factors, I would say. The fact that I can just jump on a plane within an hour or two and I'm in Vietnam, for example, which is my second favourite country. And that's also my backup plan if Thailand doesn't work out, which I briefly mentioned in, I think, my first or second video in this series. And I will talk about that more in future videos. There's going to be quite a lot of videos in this series. But yeah, just the fact of being able to hop on a plane, and then all the other Southeast Asian countries that I haven't visited yet. I'm really excited, whereas, as I said in my previous video, I'm not so passionate. Not to the extent I am in Southeast Asia, not quite so passionate about visiting neighbouring countries here on this side of the world. So yeah, one of the other main reasons is definitely the ease and the affordability of access to other Southeast Asian countries from Thailand. Okay, so number 8, this one is quite similar to number 5 and number 3, where I was talking about the culture and people in general, and that is more opportunities to meet more like-minded people. And I did expand, I'd say, enough on this one in my previous video, but if you haven't seen that one, of course, basically by this one I mean that there's just more opportunities, I find personally, in Southeast Asia in general, and in this case Thailand, to meet more like-minded people, whereas I've spent a really long stretch now in the UK, 13 years consistently, and I don't find it as easy to make friends. I don't find it as easy to meet like-minded people. I don't meet as many open-minded people here in the UK as I do in Thailand, for example. But I will say there is obviously that theme in Southeast Asia when you're an expat in particular. I mean, technically anywhere that you're an expat, but particularly in Southeast Asia, there is a bit of a theme where, you know, you can meet lots of people and there's lots of other foreigners or fellow travelers, but they don't stay around for very long. And that is something that I am aware of before I get there. You know, that is potentially going to be challenging, you know, wanting to make deep, meaningful, lasting friendships with people that maybe I haven't been able to make here, and yet in Thailand that might prove difficult, particularly Bangkok, because it's a lot of people coming and going. So that is definitely something to be aware of and to take into consideration. But you know, it is what it is. Generally, if you feel more comfortable and more aligned and more at peace and happier somewhere, then that's where you should focus your energy, if that makes sense, rather than me continuing to try and focus my energy, the little energy that I have left, into, you know, a country and a culture and in an environment that doesn't really align with me. And as I've said throughout this entire video, that's not to say that it's everybody, but you know, when you've lived in multiple different countries over a long period of time and you've visited different parts of the world, it's fairly safe to say that you have enough experience to sort of see different patterns in cultures and people in general. So yeah, more opportunities to meet more open-minded, kinder and more down-to-earth, yeah, nicer people in Southeast Asia and in Thailand in particular. Okay, so to wrap this video up, because, oh no, it's like one of those games where the, anyway, to wrap this video up, number 9 and 10, I'm just going to merge them in together because they are pretty similar. Number 9 was there's more things to do in Southeast Asia and Thailand in general, and there are more beautiful sights to see and areas to explore. That comment from the viewer that I read out earlier sort of touched on this one as well, but I'm not saying that the UK is an ugly country. It's not. It's lots of beautiful areas and lots of beautiful sites in the UK to explore and to visit and to see, absolutely, within its own rights. It's just not a country that I am as passionate about as Thailand, for example. I'm just not as passionate about exploring the UK as I am about exploring Thailand. The beaches, the temples, the architecture, the history, just even simple things like people watching and the way they go about their day-to-day lives, and just all of that, it appeals to me and is more attractive to me personally than here in the UK. So yeah, I'm looking forward to living in a country for however long that might be. I did say in my last video, or my previous videos, that my visa is not a permanent visa. So I'll just be there for the duration of the visa and then see what happens. But yeah, I'm looking forward to living in Thailand and having a lot more beautiful things to see and things that I'm a lot more interested in exploring, and different areas that I haven't been to yet, and the hundreds of beaches that I'm still yet to discover. I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, number 9 and 10, going to merge those in together. There's more things to do, and there are more beautiful sites, in my personal opinion, to see and areas to explore in Thailand, and that is my last reason for leaving the UK and relocating to Southeast Asia. Okay, we did it. I think we're just about, I dread to think what the lighting is like on the camera. I really hope that it's not messed the entire video up, because this video has taken me a couple of retakes. I've been a bit nervous filming this video. But yeah, so I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you found it helpful. I appreciate your patience. If you've followed me for a while, then you'll know that I suffer from anxiety, and I'm also unofficially diagnosed with ADHD. It's in the process of finalising that diagnosis. So yeah, sometimes my brain works a lot faster than my words can come out, and so I really appreciate your patience. It's something that I'm working on. We're all different, you know, I'm an imperfect, flawed human being, so I appreciate your patience. I obviously do hope that you found the video helpful and that you enjoyed watching it, and I hope that you watched it till the end. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I really appreciate your support as a small content creator. As I mentioned at the start of this series, I also recently created a couple of links on a few Buy Me a Coffee websites which I wasn't aware existed up until recently. I'm a bit old school, so I'm a bit late to the party, but I've noticed all other YouTubers and content creators have these Buy Me a Coffee links, so I thought, well, I might as well join the party at some point. So they'll always be linked in the description and also on my homepage, same on my Instagram page as well. So yeah, if you fancy giving my channel that little bit extra support, I'd be super grateful. I'll be making a lot more videos in this series, as I said at the start. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please make sure to hit the like button. Please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And of course, let me know in the comments if there's anything else you'd like to know. Constructive feedback, kind, helpful conversations are really great in the comments section, and sharing with people and learning from each other. I really enjoy reading them all, and I reply to you as quickly as I possibly can. So yeah, stay tuned for a lot more videos in this series, and in the meantime, take care and stay safe, and I'll see you soon.